Now that my library is back together and my laryngitis is gone, I'm back with another episode of everything you wanted to know and didn't about Project 2025. I'm going to be talking about the environment and energy policy just because they're both really intertwined. I think we all know that Trump wants to eventually get rid of the EPA altogether, but here is the specific statement for day one policy. Quote, there will be regulatory review and freeze directives issued, as well as reviews for all contracts and elimination of data that includes unrealistic climate scenarios. The main reason they want to have a full employee review and downsizing efforts is to increase domestic energy production. They state that the Department of Energy should, quote, stop its war on fossil fuels, oppose eyesore windmills, and allow Americans to drive gas vehicles. Last I checked, we were all still allowed to drive gas vehicles. He also wants to rescind Biden's ban on federal coal, oil, and natural gas leasing on federal lands and waters, which, quote, advance radical climate change agenda for which the DOI has no statutory responsibility. So because we're talking about the Department of Energy, I'm just going to pop into the energy category here. They explicitly state that energy shortage within the U.S. is purely caused by green initiatives. They blame the Biden administration for making coal, oil, natural gas, pesticides, and chemicals very expensive and increasingly inaccessible. Reform and expansion of all is necessary. So what initiatives and expansions are they going to focus on? Well, a lot of them take place in Alaska. They want to approve the 2020 Willow EIS, the largest pending oil and gas project in the United States. They also want to approve the Ambler Road Project, a 211-mile roadway for the transportation of minerals out of Alaska. Why the need for this roadway? Well, they want to expand Arctic energy operations in Alaska as a whole, including rare earth minerals, oil, and natural gas. They're quoted as saying, a significant percentage of critical minerals needed by the United States is on Indian lands. And yes, they use the term Indian throughout all of Project 2025. But the Biden administration has actively discouraged development of critical mineral mining projects on Indian lands rather than assisting in their advancement. Why is all this bad for Alaska? Obviously, it has huge environmental impacts. They want to rescind the Biden rules and reinstate the Trump rules regarding the Endangered Species Act, critical habitat exclusions, and the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. They want to reform the Endangered Species Act so that it can no longer seize private property, prevent economic development, and interfere with the rights of states over their wildlife populations. In turn, they want to create a new Endangered Species Act that ensures independent decision-making by ending resilience on so-called species specialists who have obvious self-interest, ideological bias, and land use agendas. This includes modifying regulations implementing the Marine Mammal Protection Act and the Endangered Species Act as they are run at a cost to fisheries. They want to cede all Alaskan fish and wildlife management matters to the state of Alaska. That's because the initiatives, the 30 for 30 executive order and America the Beautiful initiative, closes vast spaces of ocean to commercial fishing. And so, of course they want to overfish the areas that we are specifically preserving because, they would rather have money than protect these animals that will likely go extinct due to overfishing. Some other energy initiatives they want to focus on are limiting the NEPA analysis of natural gas pipelines to the pipelines themselves and not any upstream or downstream effects. They want to increase offshore oil and natural gas lease sales to the maximum extent permitted under the current lease program. Nothing bad ever happened with more oil rigs. Also want to eliminate carbon capture, utilization, and storage programs, including decarbonization in electricity, industrial fields, transportation, building, and agricultural sectors. Also want to repeal the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Acts because both of them give money to renewable energies. Also want to eliminate energy efficiency standards on appliances, which is annoying on so many levels and really affects every person in the day-to-day because those kind of appliances will get more expensive and you will have to pay more water bills, more electricity bills once you buy these appliances that are not as efficient. Basically end the energy section by saying the government control of energy is the control of people, which makes nationalization of the electric grid and fossil fuel bans so dangerous. Let's just look at Texas and their grid and how well that has performed over the last few years. If you're not familiar, the grid in America is outdated in so many places, and their goal here is to eliminate any federal standards for that. So it will be all on a state-by-state basis. Long term, this means more costs on the consumer. Consumers' Energy in Michigan has already upped their rates for their consumers so much in the last few years, they actually got in trouble with the state of Michigan. That will only continue with this sort of program. And you'll probably see more electrical failures as the grid gets older and older and more outdated. Moving back to more of the environmental initiatives here, they want to repeal the AIM Act, which unnecessarily regulates hydrofluorocarbons, one of the main contributors to climate change. They also want to reconsider the goal of restoring natural visibility by 2064 and push it out even further. They also want to reconsider the Cleaner Truckers initiatives to save costs, and they want to revisit the designation of PFAS chemicals as hazardous substances. In fact, they want to reassess all chemicals that have been banned based on fear as a result of mischaracterization or incomplete science. They say, in the face of uncertainty surrounding pollutants, health, and welfare endpoints, the EPA should default to the less restrictive regulatory outcomes. And then finally, in this little section, the thing that makes me laugh purely out of just morbid humor is they want to review national monuments for downward adjustment because it interferes with the ability to harvest timber on said lands. And they say the benefit of harvesting timber on said lands is increasing timber sales could also play an important role in the effort to change the behavior of wildfire because there would be less biomass overall. Yeah, let's just get rid of trees altogether. That seems fine. While we're speaking on the topic of hazards, there is just a very short snippet about FEMA in here, and they basically say they want to shift all FEMA preparedness and response costs to states and localities, eliminating all grant programs and all unions. We all saw what happened in Nashville this year, and I cannot even begin to imagine the chaos and the lack of resources if the federal government steps in and does nothing. And finally, on the topic of climate change, which is of course a pseudo-religion, they basically want to dismantle a bunch of offices. They want to limit the U.S. Global Change Research Program, or the National Climate Assessment, to a purely advisory role. They want to abolish the Office of Domestic Climate Policy. They want to abolish the Interagency Working Group on the Social Cost of Carbon. They want to abolish the Biological Resources Division of the U.S. Geological Survey. And they also want to stop all grants to advocacy groups and private academic institutions that, quote, invariably produce radical environmental research and produce little to no meaningful improvements in environmental and public health. They also want to eliminate the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. What this means is climate change usually has the most effect on the most poor populations. They want to get rid of any programs that offset that injustice. This includes opposing climate reparations to developing countries. They also want to remove the greenhouse gas reporting program, which is a pointless burden to them. And they want to reset science advisory boards to expand a diversity of viewpoints free from potential conflicts of interest. They want to do this because they don't believe in so-called experts. Republicans want to tarnish the idea of intellectualism in order to just amass more profits for themselves at the expense of our climate, of our environment, of our animal population. And let's not pretend we're not affected by this, because all of this has a huge impact on our own health and our own well-being.